But the truth is, the problems in our welfare system now are not the ones we inherited. If you cast your mind back to 2010, we took over a benefit system that was a dysfunctional mess. Overlapping entitlements handed out by different parts of the state, it very often meant people were worse off in work. Unemployment was 8%. There were queues outside job centres. People up and down the country got up and went to work, while next door, their neighbours' curtains were drawn until noon. So it was against this backdrop that Ian Duncan Smith set up the Centre for Social Justice back in 2004. People in this room will remember Breakdown Britain, the forensic diagnosis of how welfare dependency was hollowing out families, communities, and lives. This hard work, done while we were in opposition, meant that when we took office, we could deliver the biggest reform of our welfare system in its history. Universal credit was a massively ambitious plan to simplify benefits. It made sure that work always paid. We brought the welfare bill down year after year and got people into work. 800 jobs were created for every day that we were in office. And that matters because work gives people purpose, stability, connection. It changes the lives of entire families. And when Conservatives left office, we had halved unemployment. Before COVID, we had the lowest number of workless households since records began. And this is important because a child that grows up in a workless household is likely to underachieve at school. Worklessness and dependency are passed down through families. The problem is that as we came out of the pandemic, we started to see a new phenomenon. We now live in a country where 1 in 4 people self-report as disabled. People are receiving disability benefits for having tennis elbow. I know some may disagree with me, but I do not believe that 1 in 4 of us can be considered disabled without the term losing all meaning. And in this new age of diagnoses and self-certification, our sickness benefit system cannot cope. And we are now spending more on sickness benefits than we do on defence. Conservatives brought in the household benefit cap to stop worklessness paying more than wages. But new research from the CSJ has found that under Labour, people receiving sickness benefits could now get £2,500 more a year than a minimum wage worker. This is not just fundamentally unfair, it is a fiscal disaster waiting to happen. It should have been clear to anyone seeing this that it isn't sustainable. But the reason Labour have failed so badly on this over the last month is that they didn't see these problems in opposition. They thought that if Labour ran the country, all of Britain's problems would go away because they think of themselves as nice people. But sanctimony is not a substitute for policy. So when they came into office, they didn't have their version of Breakdown Britain. They had no plan and were completely unprepared for government. They didn't have a universal credit 2.0. They didn't tell their backbenchers that they needed to cut welfare. Labour now don't know what they believe. That will be the epitaph of this government. It was only when Rachel Reeves came shaking her bucket outside the DWP, asking for some quick savings to plug the holes in her figures, that in a rush, they tried to tinker with a system that needs wholesale reform. And even if their original bill had passed unamended, it wouldn't have fundamentally fixed anything, because it was a sticking plaster solution. Now, they can't fix it in this parliament, so for the next 4 years, we are stuck. We are stuck with 3,000 people a day signing on to out-of-work benefits. We're stuck with people getting taxpayer-funded cars for having constipation. The bill will go up to £100 billion on their watch. And that's just sickness benefits. Their economic mismanagement means that every day they are in office, jobs are being lost. And job losses mean more people going on to welfare and fewer people coming off. No doubt, emboldened by their success in forcing Starmer to U-turn last week, Labour's backbench MPs will now be eyeing up even more concessions. We know that there are more tax rises coming in the autumn. That's now been all but confirmed by the Chancellor. But what Labour haven't told you is that this doom loop that they have set up will mean taxes will have to keep going up. Wealth creators are fleeing the country. People have stopped hiring because of Labour's jobs tax. Fewer and fewer people will have to support more and more. That is the tax spiral. None of the other parties seem to acknowledge this. Last week, we saw left-wing Labour MPs, Lib Dems, SNP, Independents, Greens, and revealingly, Reform MPs all vote for higher welfare spending and an even more generous benefit system. Reform like to pose as a right-wing party, but they don't seem to understand that asking the taxpayer to fork out £100 billion a year on health and disability benefits isn't just completely unaffordable and unjustifiable, it's immoral. And the Prime Minister has already signalled that he's open to removing the two-child benefit cap. In fact, right at this moment, there are probably Labour MPs behind closed doors drawing up plans to force his hand. And they will find allies in Reform. Nigel Farage is committed to remove the cap, and he is warning that he is not finished yet on benefits giveaways. Make no mistake, he is Jeremy Corbyn with a pint and a cigarette. On welfare, he shows his true colours, promising these unaffordable giveaways with no plan to fix the system. I want to be clear why the Conservative government brought in the two-child benefit cap. We brought it in because we believe that people on benefits should have to make the same decisions on having children as everyone else. But Labour and Reform MPs don't even understand what the cap does, and they don't care that lifting it would create another £3 billion black hole in our finances. It's not that we don't want people to have big families. We do. But the way to achieve that is to make sure people can afford to have families because they are in good jobs, not by increasing the tax burden on working people. So next week, we're going to put this to a vote in the House of Commons. And you'll see that the Conservatives are now the only party committed to serious welfare reform. We are the only party that is prepared to tell the truth and take the tough decisions to get spending under control. That's the way to bring about real change. Getting the welfare bill down is not an impossible task, but it requires conviction and the courage to make difficult choices. We have to start from our principles. First, who needs and deserves our support? There will always be some people who need help from the state, people who have a really challenging disability, people who have worked and paid into the system for years, but who lose their jobs suddenly through no fault of their own. But we can't afford to be spending £1 billion a month on benefits for foreign nationals. It is not unreasonable to expect someone to have paid in and become a British citizen before they unlock access to sickness benefits. That was a plan we put forward yesterday, a plan that Labour voted down. We also clearly cannot afford to support 1 in 4 people who now classify themselves as disabled. We are going to have to draw a line in the sand about which conditions the state gives out support for. Food intolerances are a medical fact, but they're not something we should be handing out new cars for. This is not a joke, this actually happens. And anxiety and mild depression are real conditions, but that doesn't mean that those suffering should be signed off work courtesy of the taxpayer. The Centre for Social Justice have done some brilliant modelling, showing that if you restricted benefits to those with more severe mental health conditions, you could save up to £9 billion. Think how much good even a fraction of that could do when reinvested into mental health treatment and research, instead of funding people to sit at home. Second, how do you accurately identify those people who you've decided qualify for support? Clearly, our current system of assessment isn't working. Approval rates have soared, and we now have online sickfluencers. I never heard this phrase before, sickfluencers. They are selling people scripts to maximise their scores on assessment. We need to build in proper medical evidence to the system and go back to face-to-face assessments which never recovered after COVID. The Motability Scheme is a perfect example of what's going wrong with the current system. It was initially set up to help disabled people get around. Now 90% of its cars now have no adaptations whatsoever. That's not what it was designed for. People are qualifying with conditions like drug misuse, ADHD, obesity. The assessment system surely can't have been designed with that intention, and we cannot allow it to continue for a moment longer. And third, we need to think about what support actually helps people. Because at its best, a welfare system acts like a trampoline. It cushions your fall and it propels you back onto your feet. It should not act like a giant net that engulfs you and makes it almost impossible to climb out. Up and down the country, people with really challenging health conditions do extraordinary things. They go to work, they raise families, they set up businesses. So we need to ask, why are some people able to do that, but not others? What skills and support do they need? Giving someone, for example, 8 weeks of retraining and physiotherapy and getting them back into work is a better solution for everyone than allowing them to languish on benefits. And doing that before they fall out of the workforce is even better. We live in a totally different world from the one that we did 30 years ago. Even people who are housebound can now contribute and make use of their talent. We should be aiming for everybody to support themselves as far as they are able, while providing support for those who cannot. But to do this, we will have to win arguments. Arguments that too many in politics have forgotten how to make. Like a life of work being better than one dependent on the state. Not just better for society, although we believe that too, but actually better for the soul. That it feels better to contribute and enjoy the freedom that comes with paying your own way. Too many young people are growing up not knowing that. They think that a life on benefits is an alternative to working. They think that isolating themselves at home is okay because starting a job feels daunting. We have to show them a better way. We need to win the argument that an ever more generous welfare budget isn't kind, it's cruel. It locks people out of opportunity. It puts support for those who genuinely need it at risk. Every other party thinks the public want more welfare, but I think people have more common sense than that. I think that they can see the damage it's doing to our country. Britain needs politicians who will tell the truth about the challenges facing the country. That's the only way to get the real change we need. We need to win the argument that personal responsibility matters, that if you can support yourself, you should, that if you want a better phone or a new car or a bigger house, you need to earn that. You should not expect someone else working hard to pay for yours as well as theirs. And we need to bring back the idea of saving for a rainy day. That's almost lost now. If you think that the state is going to bail you out every time, why would you make sacrifices? Why would you put money away? Especially if Rachel Reeves is coming for your savings, your pension, or your family home. And finally, we need to win the argument that the state shouldn't be the first place you go for support, because the state can never do better than what families and communities should do. It is no wonder that our welfare bill is rising in an age when family structures are fraying and the number of people volunteering has fallen off a cliff. We should be backing the makers, rewarding the people getting up every morning, working hard to build our country. This is about getting the welfare bill down, but it's also about what we believe the good life looks like. Freedom, security, optimism. Only the Conservatives will stand up for these values and unlock the talent, dignity, and purpose of millions left behind.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to move on to the media Q&A. And first up is Carl Dinen from ITV.
Thank you very much. You've just criticised the smaller opposition parties for the way that they voted last week. Didn't you vote the same way?
I was talking about the reasoned amendment. We voted against the bill, but the reasoned amendment was actually for more benefits. They did the same thing yesterday, actually. We had amendments to tighten up the welfare system, and they were voting against that. They want more benefits. We are the only party. We are the only party that is serious about Britain living within its means and getting that welfare budget down. Rob Powell from Sky.
Thank you. You've argued today that the country is at risk of becoming a welfare state with an economy attached. The biggest part of the welfare budget is obviously the state pension. The OBR said this week that in the long run that's unsustainable. So in the spirit of living within our means and being a politician that tells the truth, do you agree, and should it be reviewed?
We need to look at where the money is going. The immediate problem we can fix right now is around working age benefits. Those pensions are not working age benefits. If we get more people into work, that will help solve the general problem of growth. There are too many people who are out of work. We are bringing in more people from abroad, which is straining the system. That's where we need to start. And that's why we're focused on looking at what we can do to bring down health and disability benefits, which currently are more than what we spend on defence. The triple lock is Conservative policy. We brought in that policy. Right now, we think that the area to focus on is health and disability benefits. There are too many people out of work. We have 28 million people working to support another 28 million who are out of work or in the public sector. Those numbers have to change. Getting people into work is what Conservatives are about. It is what we did before. We reduced the number of workless households to record lows, and that started climbing up again after COVID. Now we are seeing 3,000 people a day claiming out of work sickness benefits. That's just under Labour. That's 1,000 more than it was a year ago. This is crazy. That's the first place to start fixing things. Evan Murray, BBC.
You've lost your second former cabinet minister in a week. What does that tell us about the direction of the Conservative Party under your leadership?
What it tells is what I'm saying in this speech. What it tells people is what I'm saying in this speech. That the Conservative Party is the only party that wants to live within its means. And if there are people who want more welfare and higher taxes and more spend, they are very welcome to go to those parties that are offering that. But we are the Conservative Party. And if there are people who are not Conservatives, people who have probably been holding us back for a long time, then they should go to other parties that fit in with their values. We are a party of living within our means. Chris Hope, GB News.
Chris Hope, GB News. The benefits bill spiraled on your government's watch, didn't it, Kemi Badenoch? Will you apologise for saying you got it wrong, like as you have done on immigration? And just that question about Sir Jake Berry and David Jones jumping ship to reform UK, what has Nigel Farage got that you haven't?
Right. So I knew you were going to ask that question, Chris. I thought that Evan had spiked you. But first of all, we brought the deficit down every year until the pandemic. The pandemic was not something the Conservatives did. That was a global problem. And I can tell you that if Labour or even Reform had been in charge during the pandemic, we would be in a much worse situation than we are now. So we brought that down. As I said, we brought the number of workless households down. Worklessness kills. It completely destroys life chances for children. That is something that only we fixed, and we will fix it again. We do not want to see this problem coming back. And on the point about David Jones, who actually, I remember you reporting that he joined in January. What's interesting, whether he defected in January, what's interesting is that they're having to restate the story again. What Nigel Farage has got that I haven't got is telling people whatever it is they want to hear. If people want the truth, they should come to the Conservatives. That's what I'm for.